you put stuff down on tape. Sometimes we did, and sometimes digitally. And there's so much focus on the problems. I don't like this. I don't like that. Fix this, fix that. And I don't know that I ever got out of hearing the deficiencies and the problems and the places where I didn't quite get what I wanted.
This is Champagne is Also a Band podcast. One songwriter, one song. I'm Sven, your host for a journey into the music of Champaign-Urbana. Recorded in the Blue Box studio with a songwriter from the Champaign-Urbana music scene, past or present. Champagne is Also a Band podcast is proud to be a part of the Champagne Showers Podcast Network. Welcome to Champagne is Also a Band podcast. Today I have Robert Hirschfeld, and you may know Robert from such bands as Colonel Rhodes and, of course, the one we're going to be talking about today, Common Loon. So Robert, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much for having me.
Today we're going to be listening to your song, Automatic Skin, off of the self-titled album, Common Loon, which was released in 2019. So without further ado, let's listen to the song. Welcome back. So, of course, my first and favorite question to always ask is, what came first? Was it the music or was it the lyrics?
This one came together as a piece. It all just happened at once. I was at my sister's house outside of Boston, sitting in the room playing guitar. It just all happened at once. Typically for me, it would be the guitar. My main instrument is guitar, so I would find something that struck me as interesting or, grabbed my attention, stayed with me, that I would kind of keep working through. A lot of times I know what I want the melody to be, the vocal melody. I know where I want vowel placements and certain things, but the lyrics aren't necessarily there. So there's kind of a, the Beatles scrambled eggs phenomenon that right. Usually for me, and then I have to kind of work back through the lyrics. But this one was immediate.
In that context, what was the first lyrical line or melody that you came up with? Was it that the verse, I've got a skin that's automatic? Yeah,
it was the verse. And I mean, there's nothing complicated about this song. I'm just kind of writing on the D. It's more about how the sounds, the sonics of it. But yeah, it was I've got a skin that's automatic that's the first thing. I mean, some of the lyrics I did kind of tweak later. So I won't say that I wrote the whole thing in one sitting, but the main part was written right away. The chorus, I probably played around with the chorus for years, actually. And then...
Oh, interesting.
And then settled on whatever it is. I have a strained relationship with the lyrics of all the songs that I've written, and we've never put them down in writing. You asked me for... this is one reason I chose this song, is because I felt like I could actually talk about it in ways that I think others would be more difficult, because there are more or less set lyrics. They would change often frequently for me. I would be hesitant to share lyrics for some other songs. I was less so to share the lyrics for this one.
I'm going to sidestep a little bit here. So when you change the lyrics, is that, if you're performing or if you're recording and you change lyrics to a song, is that kind of an instantaneous thing, or is it like, I'm sick of singing this same old line and I want to change this one word or this phrase? I'm just kind of curious if it's like this improvisational thing that happens, or is it like you're just sick of saying those lines, or you feel like you could say them better?
It's both. I mean, sometimes it's improvisational. The best stuff I think that I've ever done, I don't know where it came from, right? And then sometimes there is a line or a section that I just feel like either isn't where I want it to be, or sometimes it just never left that vague nonsense syllabic,
right.
The first thing that I did where I'm literally just singing nonsense. Sometimes I can never get over, honestly, how much I like the nonsense. Like I like those particular placements of the consonants, the particular vowel sounds. So then to try and retrofit lyrics that make sense within the context of the rest of the song could be extremely difficult for me. And so sometimes I'm so stuck on the nonsense that it's hard for me to break out of it.
Okay, so even within that context, do you find that as you work on a song, or as you go out and perform a song, or get some years between when you originally wrote it and when you're either recording it or whatever, do you feel that the nonsense starts to make a certain kind of sense?
Yeah, sometimes it does. And sometimes I stuck with it. That's one reason there's no lyrics in the record.
Oh, right.
So sometimes the nonsense is enough that I'm like, that's fine. I don't care. And, the sounds that we used and the way we recorded, sometimes it didn't matter. You listen to a band like Cocteau Twins and what is she saying? I don't know. Who cares?
Right. And I noticed you enunciate well in this song.
Yeah, in this song.
And it's clear what the words are, but I do notice that you have a slight, I'm going to say the wrong kind of effect, but you've got a little bit of the telephone effect on the lyrics in some of the parts where it gets accentuated a little bit more, where it's a little bit more that warm, crunchy, hissy sound. And I'm curious about that decision in terms of your lyrics having some nonsense, but also you're very clear about what you're saying. So I don't know if you were clear because of that effect in order to balance that out, or did that make sense? Like, I'm curious about the order in which the end product, if you want to say, happened.
Yeah, I think I understand the question, and
Good. I don't. No,
yeah, knowing that there was a particular meaning and there actually were specific lyrics, and I don't know if there's a narrative or not, and we can talk about that, but that influences how I want to present the vocal sound. And this one's clearer, and there are times where maybe I do want to blur what's happening vocally and add delays and reverbs. And again, I'm choosing a vocal sound almost as a non-vocal musical instrument, not lyrical.
Right.
It's a vocal instrument, but it's not intended necessarily to be lyrical in the sense of specific words. This one, I've always felt strongly about the words that I chose, and so was more willing to present it as such. I don't listen to a lot of like singer-songwriter acoustic kind of guitar stuff, and partly because you've got to be great. I don't think I'm good enough to present that way. Elliott Smith, someone like Elliott Smith can do it. Nick Drake could do it. That's never something that I felt like I could do.
I don't know how to say this, but I feel that sense of inadequacy is something that it sounds like has driven the sound of Common Loon in general, right? Like
my self-consciousness about my own inadequacies. Yeah, I mean, there's a certain truth to that for sure. But there's also just knowing what you do well.
Yeah. Okay.
And what you want to do, and picking and choosing and picking your battles. I'm not a great vocalist. I'm not a great musician in terms of like I'm not a great instrumentalist. Matt, my partner in Common Loon, and like my friend forever. He's a great musician. He's a legit musician. I'm not. I'm kind of a hack. Now, I think I brought things to the table.
Sure.
So I don't even know that I view it as inadequacy. It's just, I just think I had a different skill set and I had to play with that. And that's fine. And there's a lot of things that I could never do and I didn't even attempt to do.
What I'm hearing is that you kind of bring some of the raw materials to the table and then it gets formed a little bit more with Matt's expertise or musicianship or whatever. I don't know. I don't want to downplay what you do because, you
can downplay it. That's fine.
But there's something so very distinctive about the guitar sound on Common Loon's work. Has it always been the same guitar and setup, or have you kind of modified it as you've gone along?
It was largely the same guitar. I occasionally would, depending on the song, play with, this or that guitar. I went through a phase of collecting vintage gear.
Do we all do that?
Yeah.
Any guitarist, I feel like it does that at some point.
Yeah. And just spending all the money that I made my job on gear. And, the sound of it was important to me, has always been important to me. But certainly I've played through a Jazzmaster on most of the 2 records that we did, most of our live shows, with a fairly similar setup in terms of my pedal board and the sounds that I was running through and the amps. In the studio, it would depend, right? Like, I say studio, at home or whatever, a recording, right? It might vary up a little bit. Our live shows, I had a fairly consistent setup, and which I liked. It was just the 2 of us live, and so I probably drove it to being a little more of a garage rock band sound live. Let's be a little harder, let's be a little more aggressive, let's just saturate it and delay and reverb, because we have to fill the sound out, the 2 of us. On record, we could do whatever we want. We could put down 100 tracks.
And that's one of the things that kind of stood out to me, is thinking about seeing, there's 2 concerts I remember seeing Common Loon at that stand out to me. As one was at Krannert Center for the Performing Arts. You played on the Impromptu, is that the Impromptu stage? Which I think that's what it's called, where it's out in the lobby. And I think that was in support of the A Long Dream of Birds album. It had happened fairly recent. And then I saw at the album, it was pretty close to the album release of the self-titled Common Loon at Exile.
We only played 1 show after that record. That was the only one.
That was the only one? Mm-hmm. Okay. I guess my point is, in the Common Loon self-titled, there's a bass in there, there's a synth. How do you work that in when you're playing live, or do you just not?
We did use backing tracks, typically for the bass and maybe a synth. I was always conflicted about that. Not even so much because it's like, I think for a time I was like, oh, that would be cheating or something. I don't really care about that, but I think the feeling of constraint by it always bothered me a little bit. But it was also like, we did choose that for a reason, and the reason was that Matt and I felt like we liked this as the 2 of us. I think for both of us, I don't know, maybe I shouldn't speak for Matt, but at least for myself, I was always hesitant to disrupt that chemistry. And so we went with that route. We'll use some backing tracks primarily for the bass. Now, we wouldn't typically load it up. It's not that we would take every single track that was on the record that we couldn't do live and just slam it into the live set.
Right.
And we try to be conscientious about not overdoing that. So again, it would be maybe the synth bass or something, just to fill out the guitar and drum sound. And that's why I think live, we probably had a slightly different sound than would be on the record.
I'm fascinated with bands that can function in that realm of just two people, drums and guitar. I don't know. It's like you have so little to hide behind in some ways. And so, I mean, you had mentioned
it kind of cuts against what I said earlier about
well, I mean, to a certain extent, yeah. But you certainly have plenty of vocal effects and guitar effects that you use during the performance. But I guess I brought that up because the synth in this isn't necessarily prominent, but I feel like it has that little voice in there that is trying to... When I say this, I feel like maybe I'm over putting things onto it, but I feel like it adds an extra sadness that I don't think is being conveyed by the guitar and drums and your vocals. There's kind of a voice at the beginning that just kind of holds onto that one note, and it's just like it lets it go, and then there's a second note that drops in that kind of adds a new context to the chords that are going on. There's a few really beautiful lines that kind of subtly show up, and I had a moment to just listen to this with only focusing on listening for that synth sound. I feel like it adds this extra like subtext to everything, which I think is a really nice touch. And how did that get incorporated into the piece?
When you reached out to me about doing the podcast, you asked me to pick my favorite song. Sure. And I don't know that this is my favorite song. I listened to it and I struggle with parts of it. I maybe picked this song because to me it is a quintessential Common Loon song. I think we played this from the very beginning. We attempted to put it on the first record. I didn't like where it landed, so I scrapped it. It ended up being on the second record. I still don't know if I love it.
Huh.
I feel like I can talk about it. I feel like I could talk about where it succeeded and where it failed. That's why I chose this song. I don't know that it's my favorite. One of Matt's songs might be my favorite, but I don't feel like I should necessarily talk about his songs.
Sure.
I think we played this from the very beginning. I don't know for a fact, but if you told me that this was played at the very first Common Loon show and we played it every show, I'd believe it. There's a version somewhere on a cassette tape, because we, particularly at the beginning, we did a lot of stuff on cassette 4-track, just a Tascam 4-track. In some ways, that's my favorite, and I love it. And I don't know if it was just how we hit the guitar sound to the tape, and Matt put a version of that synth sound down right there, and I loved that. And honestly, we could never quite achieve what was on that cassette. Now, it wasn't complete and it wasn't something that I felt like we could present as is, but it exists somewhere, and it's in my mind. I'm like always chasing that. So that synth sound, we, not only the sound, but that part, we played around with that a lot, and I think that was one of the struggles. And did we put more notes in? I think we ended up backing it up and doing it basically at half the amount of notes, and doing it slower rather than a busier section. I don't know if that was the right choice or not, but that was just something that we played with a lot of different versions of. Are there other songs that you feel that way about, that you kind of want to recapture that? Well, I'll start by saying, this isn't necessarily a therapy session for me to get off all the problems of my chest, but I listened to a lot of it and a lot of our stuff, and let me put it this way. I'm very proud of what we did. I feel very good about what we produced and what we wrote and what we did, and I listened to it, and I'm on one level, I'm happy with it. And maybe this is a function of how we approached recording, but you put stuff down on tape. Sometimes we did, and sometimes digitally. And there's so much focus on the problems. I don't like this. I don't like that. Fix this, fix that. And I don't know that I ever got out of hearing the deficiencies and the problems and the places where I didn't quite get what I wanted. And I remember for the first record, Long Dream of Birds, and we recorded this with Adam Schmidt at his house, and Adam did a phenomenal job on it. I listened to that record and I think it sounds great, but I remember very clearly a couple moments where we are in his house, in his in his living room, and we've been there for hours, and we've literally been listening to the same split second over and over and over again. And suddenly I have a moment of clarity where if someone were to walk in off the street and look at us, like, you know, what do you do? Like, what are you doing? And it's like, yeah, we've lost our minds. We've gotten so far down the rabbit hole of trying to fix this or that problem, you know, that you've lost the forest for the trees. That just stays with me out of the recording process. And I don't know that I get away from it. And then there's another element about the second record, because with the first record, you know, we really just committed to doing it. And it was kind of, we spent days and days and days and over the course of months working on it. But with the second record, it just kind of hit at a time in life where I moved away, moved to Chicago. We spent, you know, this was not Chinese Democracy. Well, I don't know. Maybe I don't know what Axl Rose was doing on Chinese Democracy. I get the sense that he was tweaking it forever. We weren't working on it. We had done a bunch of recording with Matt Talbot in Tolono, and a lot of this stuff just sat. And so it's not like I worked on it over the course of years. I felt a kind of internal pressure, certainly not external. No one's like asking where's the next Common Loon record. But I felt an internal pressure to get the thing done. And that exists as well when I listen to the songs on there. It's like, did I, you know, would I make this or that choice again? Would I do things differently? Maybe.
For me, when writing, I always think about all the possibilities of things, and not necessarily about mistakes, but being overwhelmed with, I could do this, I could do that, I could do this or that, and at the same time trying to avoid hitting this point of oversaturation of ideas. And the multiverse idea in my brain of how a song can exist with different versions of it. Honestly, there's so many songs that I think that I don't like, and then I hear someone else cover it in a different mood, and I'm like, wow, this is a great song. And I guess that kind of terrifies me in some ways. So I guess maybe I'm just empathizing, and
yeah, that's,
you know, so
that's fair. I'm a Daniel Johnston fan. I could see playing Daniel Johnston for people, and you know, they would say, what the fuck is this? You know, right. This is terrible. And yet I think his, you know, legitimate talent, I don't know if a genius, but like his legitimate talent was recognized by people.
Right.
And I can then see how covers were done by, you know, more mainstream artists. And you could present those people and they would see like, oh, that's a beautiful song. That's an incredible song.
Right.
Yeah, I've had that experience a lot where it's, you know, you present something in a different context and you get a completely different understanding of it. And it is terrifying in a sense, because you're like, oh, I exist with blinders on. Yeah.
And also that feeling of maybe returning to the same trick bag, so to speak, of like, I always think of it as like, well, you know, I know that this one thing my fingers automatically just do, and it sounds good, but it makes a lot of things sound the same, but it sounds good, but it sounds the same. And I don't know. I try not to overthink that as well. But I kind of want to get back to the song because no. I mean, all these things are leading up to how, you know, this song becomes what it is in the form that it is now. I'd actually like to explore some of the narrative and just kind of the themes that are going on in here. And I'm curious about how Skin is automatic, or I'm curious, would you think of that as something that is one of the nonsense, or does that really ring true in your brain as meaning something specific?
This is not one of the songs that is nonsense.
Okay.
I chose words, you know, very specifically in this song. So I typically have never written kind of linear narratives. In some ways, I'm jealous of people who can do that. They tell a story. Maybe it's a, you know, very powerful, beautiful, emotionally resonant story, a story that people can understand and have experienced similar experiences. That just never worked for me. I felt like I could present scenes and themes and ideas. And so to have an automatic skin, I mean, to me, it is automatic. I don't control it. You know, like I guess it's about kind of biology and evolution and the physical reality that we experience. It's completely out of my control, and automatic skin is the title, but it's important that the lyric doesn't stop at just that I've got a skin that's automatic. It's that I've got a skin that's automatic, made from a long lost rite of passage through aggregates fused. And that's kind of the element of evolutionary processes that brought us to now. And I was just questioning, are these evolutionary processes still impacting us? Have we built a society that has put us outside the bounds of physical, natural selection? And then, you know, I'll jump ahead and, you know, ask like what evolutionary processes are functioning on us now. Because in the third verse, I kind of talk about language and so it's less about being animals and being like more quote unquote highly evolved monkeys and dealing with the physical reality, and more about what is pushing us as a species. And I'm sorry, it sounds so pretentious.
No, it's funny because I kind of, skin that's automatic. I don't know.
I don't have to work it.
Well,
it works
true.
itself. You know, I mean, what like.
But I was thinking about, and obviously,
we not, incredibly complex, amazing, magical beings? And what do I have to do with it? It's automatic.
Right. I just have to drive the thing, right? And then, you know, it digests, it sweats, when I say digest, I mean, like our entire body does so many things that are automatic, right? I guess that's not what, I wasn't, what
did you think? See, I hate to talk about it because maybe
no. That's,
maybe you had a better
honestly, the skin that's automatic, maybe I wasn't really sure I could tack that down in my mind, but I did think of my overall impression of this song is kind of like, who do we think we are? Like,
that's there for sure.
I don't know.
I mean, let me jump to the next lyric. So, 10 million years and
we're the height of fashion.
Yeah. Culled from the ranks of those old irrational brutes, and we are en route to the truth, capital T.
The apes, the irrational brutes. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Sorry. It's great. I'm making connections here. That's good. No, I usually have a very good sense of like a narrative, and honestly, I don't get a full sense of a person telling the story, even though you use the phrase of I've. So we're going to say your chorus is the heaven set this holographic battleground, right? Is that what you were thinking of as the chorus? Because that's how I thought of it. It's like, because it's...
Yeah, anyway. So I will be honest that the chorus for a long time lived in that realm of nonsense, of like, I like these particular vocalizations. I like these particular monkey sounds to stay with the theme. It didn't necessarily have specific meaning. And so, but I felt like for the song, I had to find something that worked in the overall context. And so those are the lyrics that I chose for what we ended up recording. I don't know that there's not a particular narrative. There's various scenes and kind of ideas presented, and you can appreciate them or reject them. I don't really care.
That's fair. I mean, but I was thinking about how, if we're going to talk religion,
I'm happy to talk religion.
What I'm going to say may seem like I'm dismissing it completely, but
go for it.
The idea of heaven, it's easy to say, well, that's just a human construct. I don't necessarily get the sense that animals or trees are all contemplating heaven. It seems like a very human constructed. Is that maybe in that sense of evolution, is that our part of developing our brains to think that there is an afterlife? Because I've seen a lot of animals pass away, and I can't say that the animals think about, is there an afterlife? And so I guess, just in that context of what is human and what is everything else, I want to say. Heaven seems like a very specific construct. Does that make... I don't know if I... Like, in the context of this as being like, where is our next step in evolution? If there is a next step, or have we halted it through our own progress or sense of progress, should I say?
I don't know. I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know how to respond to that. I guess I would say the first line being about the skin is automatic. I'm not controlling it. I'm not in control. And maybe there's a through line there with the more religious concept of heaven, and heaven set this holographic battleground. And is it real? Is it a hologram? Is it a simulation? I don't know. I mean, I'm going through the motions of these struggles and these fights. Sometimes maybe I feel like a piece on the board that was set up by someone else. I'm out of control. Or at least I'm not in control. I'm not in control of the skin. I didn't put the pieces on the board. I didn't organize life this way. I didn't organize reality this way. I don't even know if it's real. I'm reacting according to what I see and according to what, my body prompts me to do. I don't know about the next step in evolution. Yeah, the religious stuff is heavy with me. I mean, I was raised Catholic and did 12 years of Catholic school, and my undergraduate degrees in religion. Have spent time thinking about religious concepts and ideas, and what's good and bad, and what's right and wrong, and what's a good way to live, and just, not only that, but also not only thinking about what's good and bad and what's right and wrong, but some of the tropes and the concepts that get presented in religious stories. So I think that's there in the song.
In some ways, I'm overcome with the simplicity of this song in some ways, like
because I'm a hack.
No, I don't, honestly,
it is a very simple song. Musically,
any idiot can make
simple.
Things complicated. It's the person that can make it simple and good that is the genius. But anyway,
look, there are all kinds of extremely talented musicians, instrumentalists, singers who I don't care to listen to.
My favorite part is, and I'm going to name this the bridge part because I can't really think of a good spot or whatever to call it. But when you go, we stole away on a broken wave, and there's such a great, like, the background vocals and like the additional vocals are so nice. And that is so, if I were to think of a sound that makes me think of Common Loon, that is that sound. And then it's this almost meditative spot. And then what I love, I mean, the chords through there is great. It is beautiful. But the part that catches me and I love is it's just like, you finish the phrase of broken wave, and then the instrumental part, it just like explodes. It like, I haven't looked at it in terms of a waveform, but I just imagine that it's just like you would have the normal wave, and it's just like that the dynamics just spread out and explode at that point. I don't know if I have any better words for it, but it's just like it hits as a very surprising part, and also just it just gives a little chill off moment, and then it just seems huge, and I love that. So that's my favorite part. I'm just kind of curious what your favorite part of the song is.
Well, let me say that's great. I love that that's your favorite part, because that is maybe the single part that when I listen to, I struggle with the most about, like, the decisions that were made.
Really?
And whether that's right or not.
Huh.
Which is great. I love to hear that. Not only because, or not because, hey, that affirms the decision that we made, because it's just one of those indicators that people have such different experiences. And there's a lot thrown in there. If you looked at the waveform, but if you looked at just the number of tracks, there's probably a ridiculous number of tracks. If I were to go back to our original recording live, it's mostly a vocal, just like we would just ba ba ba's ba ba dum ba ba dum ba. I've heard a horn section in my head, which would be totally different and off the wall. I've heard that, though, doing that line. On the recording, we ended up going kind of with, noise, and there's feedback, and there's kind of a feedbacky, noisy guitar that does that kind of melodic line. There's some vocals in there similar to what we would do live, but they're very buried. I don't know. Who knows? There was a lot of ways that section could go. So I find it interesting that you picked that one.
Those vocals on a very simple line of "we stole away on a broken wave." I kind of see a lot of regret in that line. Not only is there one vocal happening at that time, but there's several vocals that are happening at the same, or at least there's a chorus kind of people. It sounds like, in my mind, it's like a mutual, I don't know if you want to say a societal or like a species regret of like, this is all of us. This is all of us diving off the cliff together.
That's great.
Kind of how I interpreted that line. And then I hate to say it, but like the explosion part is just the splat kind of, I mean, not to be too gross about that, but I mean, it just feels like that is the dive of us as a human species, just kind of a dive off the cliff and then just boom. I don't know. Anyway, that's what I'm picturing in my mind.
I'm pleased with that interpretation.
It has so sad but so beautiful in my mind. So
well, thank you. Yeah, my favorite part is probably the section right before the very end, where out of the chorus it then goes to the 6 and the 7 before resolving back to the D.
Heaven shade our eyes in case we turn around. Is that the that modulation?
So there's some religious and biblical stuff like going on in the song, and I probably changed the lyrics here and there, but sometimes I also I would feel self-satisfied if there was a lyric that could be heard different ways or interpreted different ways. And there's a line in there of, heaven left us all to wander, or maybe wonder, sure. Again, just kind of, I didn't choose this. I came into this reality. I don't know. What do I know? The battleground, this chessboard was kind of set up for me. I'm left to wander through it. I'm left to wonder about it. Whatever. Sometimes I might change those lyrics here or there. So there's kind of a religious component to it for me. And then more explicitly in that last section, that was just one where it's the sound of it, the chord change, the lyrics kind of all came together. And that's where that always was the same. Like that always lived exactly as it was on the record. Yeah. Heaven shade our eyes in case we turn around. Don't turn around, Edith. And which was go for it.
My religious upbringing is just the don't turn around and look at me lest you die. If we're gonna go Judeo-Christian,
we are here. Yeah,
the to be able to gaze upon the face of God or His presence or whatever. That's I don't know, when you said that made me think of it, and I don't know if that was exactly what you intended, but it's just like, oh, I didn't even think about it in that context. And
I think it's the same concept, but presented in a different particular story, like the story of Lot and Sodom and Gomorrah. God tells Lot and his family to flee, and his wife looks back and turns into a pillar of salt. And
what is a pillar of salt, everybody?
I don't know. Presumably there are these rock formations, I guess, in the Middle East. I don't know. So that's what I was thinking about there. And so, heaven shade our eyes in case we can't help ourselves. And we do turn around and look back. And now in the story, in the actual biblical story, she's not named Edith, but in some traditions, like that's her name.
Oh, I didn't know that. I was going to ask about that.
So that's why that is what that is.
I like as I'm hearing more and more that I'm liking this song even more. Why did you pick this song to be the one you wanted to talk about today?
I do think this is a quintessential Common Loon song that we had from the very beginning. We probably played in 99% of the shows we did. I think I also just felt comfortable talking about it in a way that maybe I wouldn't feel as comfortable talking about others. I had maybe more specific ideas lyrically, conceptually. Maybe it's interesting to me because I hear it and I like it, but I don't know, it's interesting to talk about where maybe you fell short as well. And I hear that when I listen to this song where it's like, oh, I don't know that we ever captured a certain magic that's in that like cassette 4-track demo, particularly the sound, just this, like I've said, it's a very simple song, and I'm just like riding on that D, and it's all about like, well, what's the very subtle variations of how that chord is being hit, what the amp sound is, what the effects are. And this song lives in that place for me of like, I don't know, I'm conflicted about it. So it's more interesting to talk about for me than maybe something that I'm like, that's great, we nailed that one. No, I have a lot of mixed feelings about it.
Since this song has been around for maybe since the beginning of Common Loon, how has this song changed for you over the years?
I don't know that it's changed for me. It's a simple song. It's one, as soon as I kind of wrote the verse melody, to me, I was like, oh, that's a winner. Huh. It just grabbed me. It was like, have I not heard, like, am I stealing this from somewhere? Have I not heard this before?
When you're like, this line is so good, or you like it so much that you're like, I must have just absorbed this from somewhere, and I don't know that that's what I'm doing.
Correct. Yeah.
Oh man. Yeah. I hate that feeling.
So I don't know if I've been critical of it or not, but as soon as I played it, I was just like, oh, that's it for sure. And simple is fine. I don't mind simple. Maybe some of the ideas that I'm trying to present or talk about or discuss are more complicated or a little more, than the music is itself. And that's okay. The music is a vehicle for me for an experience beyond, what are the chord progressions. And I still feel that way when I hear it. So in that sense, no, I don't know that it's changed. I have a different relationship with different versions of it.
Champaign is also a Band podcast is proud to support Jubilee Cafe. Jubilee Cafe is a free weekly meal program at Community United Church of Christ, 805 South 6th Street in Champaign, Illinois. Jubilee Cafe serves a home-cooked meal from 5 to 6:30 each Monday. Their mission is to feed hungry people by cooking healthy, delicious meals and by serving their guests restaurant-style with servers waiting on tables. Jubilee Cafe is open to anyone who cares to eat with them. Because food insecurity among students is so high, they serve students as well as others in and around the Champaign-Urbana community who struggle with hunger. Meals are free to all and will be served each Monday evening, located in the accessible lower level of the building at 6th and Daniel Streets in Champaign. For more information on the meal or how to volunteer, go to the Jubilee Cafe CUCC Facebook page or email them at jubilee.cafe@community-ucc.org. That's jubilee.cafe@community-ucc.org. Welcome back. So, Robert, what is your favorite Champaign-Urbana venue, past or present?
Well, I'm going to go with first thought, best thought, and that would be Mike and Molly's, R.I.P. And I liked playing upstairs. I liked playing in the beer garden. I think it's a symbol of a different version of downtown Champaign that unfortunately no longer exists. I have good memories of playing shows in many different places around town. The Courtyard Cafe, Red Herring.
The Courtyard Cafe, people don't really talk about that much.
No.
But it's there, and
it's there, but
people mention it from time to time, but it's not like everyone's like, oh yeah, that's the venue. But,
well, it's not like it's a great venue in terms of ambiance and, but I think it's representative of the university, which is the big dog in town. I mean,
sure.
Honestly, supporting music, and I think that's important. And I saw some great shows there. I remember seeing the Books there, which was awesome. They were so good. They paid money, and like is that okay to talk about? Like, you should pay artists, right? Like that's important. If you have someone good booking that venue, that was great. And in a way, I'm very surprised that was like the next one out of my mouth, but whatever, it came to my head. The High Dive and its various incarnations, Brass Rail, Canopy Club. I have good memories of many different venues, but Mike and Molly's would be the one I would choose.
There was just something amazing, maybe in the beer garden, and people can have different feelings about this, but there was something balancing about the fact that if you really wanted to, you could walk by the gate and watch the show without having to go in. And I feel like that, at least, I don't know, I guess to me, I just feel like not everybody can always chip in to watch a show, but to be able to at least experience it without, anyway, I don't know if I'm going off on some kind of weird rail. But
for sure. I mean, I walked by there several times, and maybe I didn't have time, or it just wasn't on my schedule to like go in and listen to music, but I would stop for 5 or 10 minutes and listen to what was happening. I think that's beautiful. And there was just music being kind of pumped through downtown Champaign. This is a really beautiful space too, with the brick and the ivy, and my memories of that space go way back, even before playing music. And so that's just a precious spot with a lot of good memories for me. I loved upstairs too, and I liked that in the same venue, very different feelings and vibes. And upstairs would almost be like a packed in kind of house show. Everybody's there. There's very little space. Yeah. Like punishingly loud if you wanted it to be. And sometimes I did want it to be. And, maybe if I have like one single greatest kind of music scene memory or story or whatever, it's upstairs at Mike and Molly's. And on our second self-titled record is the song Harry Dean Stanton, and Matt and I planned this in advance. It's like, okay, we're going to go into this show and we're going to record everybody singing the chorus at the end. I want a crowd of people chanting Harry Dean Stanton's name. I want it to be like the end of Pink Floyd Fearless, which is like a soccer stadium chant.
Right.
But, I want it to be at Mike and Molly's in Champaign. And I want everybody like just chanting Harry Dean Stanton. So the audio that we used on the record is from a show at Mike and Molly's. And we told people like, okay, this is what we're going to do. We got the mic set up, we're going to play the song, but at the end I'm going to hit record on the computer and we're going to use your audio. So that's special to me, that like we have that moment in time of the Champaign-Urbana music scene, and it's collective. Everybody participated.
Right.
I can hear certain people who I could name. They're like, maybe a little louder than everybody else.
Right.
And so to me, that's cool to have that on the record.
I'm going to have to listen to that again. Yes, so very different. So very different vibes going upstairs or being out in the beer garden. I don't know. Yeah, I really miss... What was kind of cool, though, at least in the upstairs, I always remember that was where you could hear... Like, it would be smaller local acts that would be opening for sometimes national acts or people from out of town, and it would just be an opportunity to have that intimate kind of venue. But yeah, sometimes you were packed in there like sardines, and it was not always the most physically comfortable, but
no,
there's something, I mean, I don't know.
Not fun to lug your gear up and down the steps either, but I don't know. And I just aesthetically too, the little window and the backdrop, I just liked that place. And shout out to sound guy Bob, who ran sound for so many shows there, and was really good at his job. As someone on the other side of the room, you depend so much on the person running sound. You put a lot,
right?
Yeah, like you just turn over a lot of control to that person. I just always felt like the people who ran sound at Mike and Molly's would do a good job.
I've been to enough shows that I've not Mike and Molly's, but plenty of shows where I've seen the same band but at different venues, and the venue and the sound all makes the difference as to whether gives a good first impression or gives a bad first impression. There's a lot riding on the sound.
Yeah, it's everything. We'd go and play in Chicago at Shuba's, and I would walk in feeling like this is going to be great because I know that they're professional here. Having that confidence in a live show setting is really important.
What do you think makes a good music scene? Right?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, Common Loon was active in town for 10 years. give or take, 2005, 2015-ish. And for at least a chunk of that time, I felt like there was a pretty good music scene in Champaign-Urbana. There were a lot of bands that I enjoyed playing with, that I enjoyed listening to. I could run down the list. Shipwreck, New Ruins, Living Blue. There were bands that would play. There were kind of more university bands. Like I remember like World's First Flying Machine. We played a bunch of shows with them. I always really liked that crew. I'm certainly missing some. I don't know. And I don't feel at 45, and as someone who, I'm spending most of my time at home, I don't go out. I'm not sure what's happening. I don't know that I can talk about the quality of the scene right now. Is it good? Is it bad? I don't know. I do wonder if you'd ask people that time, like, oh, well, now it's not very good. It was good 10 years ago. Maybe they would have said that. I don't know. It's such a chicken and egg question, right? Like, the music scene is good because there are good artists, acts, bands, individuals who are partaking in it and contributing to it. But is there something in the environment that helps foster that, helps produce that? I don't know. I can say that I think I go to downtown Champaign and it seems like a wasteland to me. Are the choices that were made, or I don't know, maybe choices weren't made. Maybe that's the problem. But is that what you want out of the center of what should be culture and commerce? We have a lot of bars down there.
Sure.
I don't know that there's a lot of art, or I don't know, it's conducive to artists. I grew up in this town. I remember when downtown Champaign was a wasteland in a different way, and then it bounced back. I don't know. So much has changed in the culture at large beyond even just local economics and politics, that, how much of it is about the way we live in the 2020s in terms of, what's available to you on your screen, on your phone, streaming at home, like the pandemic. We're on this speed track forward. And so it's like, I don't know how to apportion, whether it's just blame or causation or whatever. It's a really tough question to answer. Maybe there is a really good music scene right now that I'm not aware of. That's totally possible. Someone was telling me that the house show scene is pretty good at the moment. Could be true. I have no idea. I hope that is.
I've aged out of the house scene for the most part.
Well, yeah, I have to. At the same time, I'm not in my 40s going to crash some like house party, but I remember being younger, and whether it was at a house show or whatever, and you encounter people who come to see music who are older, and that never bothered me.
Right.
I liked it. It was great.
Yeah.
If someone wanted to come by and say like, oh, I grew up, I came up listening to whatever, Pink Floyd and Led Zeppelin and whatever stuff from the 60s or 70s or 80s, whenever, and they would maybe say like, oh, I like your music, I appreciate what you're doing. Like, that's a huge compliment,
right,
to me. So I don't know, never bothered me to see older people at shows, but I get that it feels bizarre. And I'm not crashing house shows, so.
Right. Well,
I hope they exist. I hope they're doing very well.
Yeah, it seems like anytime anyone mentions a house venue on the show, they always mention some house that I've never heard of, which I think is kind of remarkable. I talk to enough people about house shows that it seems like it's a never-ending spring of new venues, but it could be just every semester there's a new house venue that pops up just with the college scene. I
think the economics of it are important, and maybe that's something that just needs support. And maybe we don't give it the support that we should. If you're a bar owner, if you're a venue owner, like, you've got to make money. Maybe a scene that's conducive to live music and bands, maybe that's not the easiest way to make money. I don't know. I'm not in that world. That's not what I do.
Right.
I suspect that that's true. I suspect that there are easier ways to make money. And so I think there has to be a conscious choice at some point that says, we value this. We think this is important. We think this is important enough that we are going to pool our collective wealth and, even in some small way, support it. We do that for all kinds of industries in certain ways. Like you give exemptions, you give subsidies, you suspend this or that rule so this building can be built. I do think choices were made to turn downtown Champaign into what it is. I think some of those choices overlooked what had made it the place where people wanted to be, such that you could continue to invest in it and throw money at it, build buildings and condos and, mixed use residential commercial buildings downtown. I just say it for me, and again, this is my opinion. I loved going downtown Champaign a number of years ago. Mm-hmm. Now, not so much. There are establishments, businesses down there that I do enjoy and I do go visit and support, but just overall, what is the culture? What is the sense? What is the feel? A number of the establishments which go back, which went back decades, have closed up. Sometimes there's just a natural end to anything, a business, a life, whatever. I'm not sure for all of them they necessarily wanted to end, but it didn't make sense anymore to continue in the current climate. And so that's tough. And, but that presents new opportunities.
Champaign is Also a Band podcast is proud to support Exile on Main Street. Exile on Main Street, located in the old train station building at 100 North Chestnut Street in downtown Champaign, has been helping to build record collections since 2004. Carrying a wide array of new and used LPs, CDs, and video games. Exile on Main Street has something for just about any music enthusiast and old-school gaming devotee. Exile also hosts regular free live music shows on its stage, so be sure to check out their Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter pages for the up-to-date details on the next upcoming event. Open 7 days a week, they can be reached by phone at 217-398-MAIN. That's 217-398-6246. Welcome back. So, Robert, what is your favorite non-musical thing or things?
Right now, I am extremely into flying my drone.
Really?
Yeah. It's a totally different perspective on the world, and it's an incredible piece of technology. Basically carry it around with me all over the place, wherever I go. It's in the car right now.
I was just going to say, is it right there under your chair?
It's not under the chair, but it is outside in my car, because I just kind of never know when I want to put it up and take a look around at what's going on.
Heck yeah.
I do use it for my job quite a bit, but I use it personally as well. It's fun to do. It's fascinating to see that perspective on the landscape. So that's one of my favorite things.
Can I interject with, you said that you use it as part of your job sometimes. What do you use it for in your job?
Well, I work for an environmental advocacy organization called Prairie Rivers Network. We work to address the various environmental ills plaguing the state of Illinois, of which there are many. I work a lot on agriculture, row crop, corn and soybean agriculture, and its pollution problems, water pollution, runoff. There was a massive dust storm yesterday that I got caught in, which was scary. And this is a dust bowl, we're 100 years out from the dust bowl that people think of, and the Great Depression dust bowl. And, a lot of the same problems and conditions. You leave soil bare half the year because of the way we grow crops, and, it's going to blow off. There was a dust storm warning in Chicago yesterday. I think that's the first one they've ever officially recognized in Chicago. And it was all stuff that was blowing up from central Illinois.
Oh, I didn't realize that.
Yeah.
Okay.
A good portion of my work is communicating to people, whether the general public or lawmakers, decision makers, what is happening, what is going on, what is the reality literally on the ground. And there are a lot of myths out there. There's a story, there are narratives out there about farming and agriculture and how we produce food and what we're doing on the landscape and that we're feeding the world. I think those narratives and those myths should be investigated, to put it mildly. So one way I can communicate and tell the stories about what's happening is to present that perspective. Let me show you what our rivers and streams look like. You might not see them. You might not see how we have degraded and transformed the landscape, streams, rivers. But let me show you very clearly what's happening. I have found that using the drone to get some of that footage can be very effective. It's also just really fun to fly.
Sure. I didn't realize that the dust was actually from Central Illinois going up to Chicago, but it's called a baboob or whatever is haboob.
Yeah.
I don't know why I thought it would be, but that's typically related to more arid desert climates apparently, and that's kind of scary to think of the Midwest having desert-like conditions.
Yeah. We are east of the Mississippi. Historically, we have a too much water problem. We have re-engineered the landscape dramatically to get water away because typically we have too much water for the crops that we kind of want to grow, corn and soybeans. You could make an argument that Illinois and some of the Midwestern states and Great Plains states are the most radically transformed landscapes on planet Earth.
Mm.
You know, when you look at the entirety of what we have done, how much we have transformed the land, the waterways, the hydrology. We had 22 million acres of tall grass prairie in the state, and now we have 22 million acres of corn and soybeans. You know, this is wet prairie.
Right.
So it is insane that we are having dust bowl conditions in this state. And yet, it is also the logical consequence of farming the way that we do and what we incentivize. Yeah, I spend a lot of my time at work and sometimes outside of work thinking about these issues and, you know, shit posting on Twitter about it as well.
I'm sorry to have changed your favorite non-musical thing into perhaps a very sad thing.
I'm just a total bummer all the time. Like, the music is all about, like, the end of the...
Right.
Like, concepts of societal collapse just, like, I think are all out throughout Common Loon. You know, that was even before I started this job, and it's part of what I do at work as well. But, you know, it doesn't bother me.
It doesn't bother. Well, so many things to think about every day, and I don't know. It's even more indicative of how our lives have consequence. Good and bad, obviously, but it's great. Now I'm morose. Robert, thank you so much for being on the show. And
are you sure?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, telling me about your song Automatic Skin, the history of how Common Loon writes music, you know, your favorite venue, and what can make a better music scene or what makes a good music scene. And of course, your favorite non-musical thing and also sad thing as well. I appreciate you being on the show and coming all the way out here. So thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you for having me. I actually really did enjoy it. I did. It was fun.
Excellent. Excellent.
Thank you for listening to Champaign is Also a Band podcast. This is Robert Hirschfeld from Common Loon, reminding you, great music is out there. Go find it where you live.
That's a wrap.
Champaign is also a band.
You almost have an NPR voice. It's so good.
Studio South Beaker on the inside.
They call it specialist toast.